What's up, guys? My name is SARA, DIETSCHY, rhymes with Peachy. Welcome to another episode of the Creative Exchange. I have a very special guest with me today, Chris Howe.
Hi.
Woo.
Hi.
Did you know the first time that I discovered you, I thought your name was like Chris Ha?
Yeah, that's how Siri says it too.
Really?
Calling Chris Ha. You're like, no, I should
so
teach Siri.
fun. Chris Ha.
Yeah, Chris Ha Ha. Just people laughing all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But tell the world what you do, who you are, where are you based?
Yeah,
Canadian?
I'm Canadian. I'm from Toronto. I'm officially, it's cool to say it now, and it's like to tell people I'm also a YouTuber now.
Mm-hmm.
I've just generally been a creator for a super long time, musician, singer songwriter, videographer, cinematographer, entrepreneur, just a whole mixed bag.
So we're definitely going to talk about music. That's
Yes.
exciting.
Hundo P, please.
One hundo fee. So how I met Chris was now you guys have a name.
Yes.
I guess. Dope Squad?
Dope Squad.
Dope Squad of Canada. So this features Peter, Maddie, Jesse,
Yep.
right? Am I missing anyone?
Alan.
Okay. Yeah,
Dennis.
yeah.
I don't know. There's just
the Canadian squad.
Yeah, our little Dope Squad.
I love it. I love it so much. And so you guys individually create really cool creative content on YouTube. And so your channel, I would say, is more focused around the business side of creativity.
Yeah.
Right?
So I have an agency in Canada. I've worked with Mercedes-Benz and all these other companies and Corona and things like that. So I kind of wanted to have a different take on it because I was very aware that Peter has built his niche and Maddie has his niche. And I was like, well, if I'm a part of this group or this Dope Squad, or at least being, slotted in beside these names, what can I do that's different? So I'm going to bring something to the table though, that from my perspective was business. I was like, this is the thing that I feel like I've done really well at. I've grown an agency, worked with really cool clients, and I really want, as a bigger goal, is to help other creatives out there in the world make a living off their craft, a sustainable living, longevity, where they can go and pursue what they love and actually make an income at it. I think that's the bigger message.
Yeah, which is incredible because I think so many people now have the power to make creativity and art just a straight up career.
Yep.
Where I think previously it was really difficult, and the internet has done such an amazing job of helping with that. But what have you found some differences between working with brands directly with social media channels, so whether it's your personal YouTube or Instagram, opposed to working as on the agency side of things? So maybe it's more you creating content for the brand specifically on that side. What are some of the differences?
I think the first thing is your position of power. So when I was working on the agency side and trying to get clients, it was a lot more difficult to land the job, and you'd have to push harder and you have to prove yourself, and a lot of the times you'd have to shape the creative based on what they really wanted. So on the
and you're
socials,
competing with people probably,
100%.
right? Other agencies.
Yeah. So then it becomes well, what's the price? What's the thing that separates you? And the difference that I find on the social side is that brands just trust what you want to do. And that's a really cool position to be in. I think that was the bigger goal of why I wanted to pursue social and build a social following, is because I wanted to be able to here's a creative idea that I have. And then they're like, yes, 100%. Whereas on the agency side before, and we still do it, but I always felt like I would come to the table and be like, this is the idea. This is a game changer. This would be amazing. And they're like, not too sure. Can you just shoot slow motion B-roll of people smiling?
That would
and you're
be
like,
great.
I can? Of course. Let's do it.
What comes into my head is Mad Men. So have you watched that show?
I know. I'm
Okay.
one thing you'll learn about me is I'm obsessed with The Office, and I have yet to branch out into any other
Into
show
anything else?
for the last 6 years.
You know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
That's the only show that's okay to do
Yeah.
that. I've been watching Friends over and over and over, and I finally finished it for the 4th time. All 10 seasons for the 4th time, because it's my classic lunch snack show.
It's the best.
And so I just powered through it, and I was like, you know what, Sarah? So how did you get into music? How did guitar start? Because you sing as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. I haven't done it as much in the last little while, but we are planning on hopefully working on a small EP. That's another story we can delve into after this. The true story of it was that I went over to a friend's place. He had bought a guitar. We were both 12. And then he literally was like, hey, do you want to start a band? And I was like, I don't have a guitar. He's like, well, go and get one. And I literally went out the next day and bought a guitar, and we just started playing Blink-182 covers.
I love that so much. I think music starts with the idea of whether you're in the crowd watching people play music or you have friends that are like, let's start a band. It starts with that idea. Then it's like, okay, maybe I should actually learn how to play.
100%.
You know? And I've played guitar for forever. And I think what we were talking about last night was there's this time when you realize that music can't be your job.
Yeah.
And so you kind of just drop everything. Yeah. And it's no longer really becomes a passion. And that makes me so sad because music used to be such a big part of my life. So have you kept going with it? Is it something that has like kind of came and gone? Like what is music to you now?
Yeah. So, I mean, like how it kind of like came to be was like I really wanted to be a full-time musician, singer-songwriter, and like it's scoped from everything from being in like a rock band and playing bass and playing keyboards and doing that kind of stuff to like wanting to write songs. And like I was very inspired by like Jack Johnson and Jason Mraz and that kind of stuff. And I really wanted to pursue it heavily. I would play bar gigs and like everything to like after the bar gig was done, I'd run up to each person and be like, hey, just want to let you know that I have a CD, and I would like hustle stuff super
Your
hard.
Mixtape.
Yeah. Oh man, mixtape was fire. And then in Canada, which is really cool and specifically about like Canada in general and how it supports the arts, is there's a lot of like grant funding. So you can get like $10,000 to make an album, and you can get like 25 grand to make a music video. Wow. So like, I think that's number one. I think that's a big reason why Canada produces so many like amazing creatives in general, or musicians. That's why like Justin Bieber, Drake, all these things, because there's an amazing like funding system. And energy and just ways of support to make things happen.
Practical ways.
And like I had made that surfing and playing guitar video. It got featured. I had this whole concept, wrote up pitches, found directors, and like pitched to try to get a music video, everything from like reference letters from like all the top industry people. Wow. And I didn't get the grant funding. And I remember just like, I think that was like the moment where I like, it wasn't that I was just discouraged, but I just felt like I had thrown the dart on the wall so many times and tried so hard, and it just like wasn't working. And I felt like I put so much into it, and the return back, other than like a great emotional and like heartfelt response for me, it just was like, this isn't going to be my career. And to face that and just accept it and be like, okay, I really gave it a shot. I genuinely tried, and I can look back and be like, you know what? At least I won't regret that. Yeah. And I really feel like I put my best foot forward. And at that point, video was taking off, all these other opportunities and social stuff was happening, and like the chance to build an agency and like grow it with like my partner and do all these things where like that also gave me like creative satisfaction. And I was like, you know what, let's chase this, because I can build a career with it, and I can come back to music when I'm re-inspired, because it just, every time I'd look at a guitar, it wasn't like a fun thing anymore. And that was like, I think I had to like channel that and just be like, you know what, right now, this is a bit of a poisonous relationship. Yeah. I'm going to dip for a second, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think there's a reason why everything happens, because guitar was my life at one point, and I wanted to be in that famous band and touring. And, it was just, and during the time, you weren't seeing a lot of like badass chick guitar players. So in my brain, I was like, I can be that, like I have an edge. But when it became not fun for me anymore, it was really weird, because that was my entire life. I wanted to do that so desperately. But then it became about the gear. And I was like, okay, I can make cool sounds, but I'm not learning anything new. What's up with that? That's kind of whack. So I moved on, and I found video, and it's been amazing. And now I'm trying to circle back a little bit to it, but it's weird when you have that moment. So did you have that moment also with wakeboarding and surfing, or is that something that you just always do and it's like a part of you, and you've accepted, okay, maybe this isn't the most lucrative thing, like career, but I can do it for fun? I
think the evident thing about wake surfing is that to be like world class at it, you need to live in Florida. And I was like, there's just, I love this, but I don't love it enough to move to Florida, live on a lake, and like hang out with like all the dudes that surf all the time and go to the gym, and like for the chance to potentially only make a living at it if you were the top 3 wake surfers. And those people had years and years of experience of like being great skimboarders and like other athletes in other areas. So when they came into wake surfing, and just context for what wake surfing is for other people who don't know, it's when you make a wave with your boat and you can legitimately surf that wave with a surfboard without a rope.
Sounds so fun.
So it was like a new sport. It was like growing very quickly. So in Canada, I was able to like be considered number one. Like I was on the top of the podium for all the contests in Canada when it was like still very popular. And the excitement around it has kind of like died in Canada a little bit. But I was like, I kind of always knew, like it was evident that I was like, I'm never going to make a career out of this. So I can always keep this in that spot where I enjoy it and spend time on the boat with my family. And like, it was very easy to slot that in as something I enjoy with my life. Cause I knew that I couldn't like monetize it to a level where I would make a living at it. I can make a few $100 here and there, like teaching lessons and meet cool people and use it as like a networking tool. But with music, I think it's one of those things where you're like, if I just put things into this all the time and practice all the time, there's maybe a chance. And I would watch people like Ed Sheeran and I would watch people like Macklemore and I'd be so inspired by them. I was like, I'd always envision myself on stage with that. But I think going back to what we were talking about there's just a moment you're like, you know what? Other things are working in my life. It's gravitating towards this way, which was like the video, social agency stuff. And I was still happy, and that's okay.
And I think people have to not just pursue your dreams, find your passion. That's something that I think both of us in our content will always champion.
Yeah.
But you also have to be on that line of like being practical.
100%.
And follow your passions, but there has to be something in your brain that's like, if this isn't working, you have to move on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're an amazing wake surfer or an amazing singer-songwriter. Sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you can't find something that you're still passionate about that you can make your job.
Yep.
You know?
Like I still get very excited about making videos, and YouTube right now for me is like this place where I can play, try new things, learn and keep getting better. And that's my favorite part about YouTube specifically right now, is that because it's like a condensed like close up on my life, I feel like I've gotten better at speaking. I've gotten better at being a creative in general because I'm having to pump things out all the time, that your mind is always like running with like new ideas, try this, try that. I wanted to become better at like being a cinematographer. And because of that, I feel like YouTube has made my life better.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you see with the agency world that, I mean, you mentioned earlier, obviously, I think big companies, brands, maybe they're kind of like living in the past, but is there something in the agency world that you see that needs to be shaken up, that maybe there's people out there with little agencies or little creative houses? What's something that you see that could maybe like collectively, we should do this better? Or, you know, is there anything on your side of things that I think just could help push it forward? Yeah,
I think that's a great question. I think it's being realistic with like what actually works. Like there's so many times I feel like I make a video and you're like why did we make this video? And like no one's answering that bigger question. And I think there's a lot of people in these like marketing roles and these other places that they just think they have to do this rather than trying to like pioneer or champion something that's really great and unique. And I feel like a lot of brands and a lot of people, and I think it's rooted in fear, they just don't want to take the risk because they don't want to lose their jobs. And I think fundamentally there's just a lot of white noise and garbage being made all the time and big money being spent on stuff. And I think like that money could be used to make really great content that actually converts and creates sales, that gets people excited. And a lot of times people just follow a recipe over and over and over again, where I feel like the people behind it are just not excited. And I think that's like a fundamental thing in the agency world that I wish would get like shaken up a bit more.
I think you have a unique perspective of where you're in those meetings with those brands and companies. The only experience I've had with working with companies is for my YouTube channel or for my Instagram or Twitter, Facebook. So they have a degree of understanding of influencer marketing, and they're smart. They're trying to step out and take risks. But with the kind of the more traditional side of things, are companies now coming to you wanting help to produce actual content, or is it still about short, snackable advertisements? Like, do you see some of the shift going towards, okay, maybe us as a company needs to actually create a podcast or create a video series? How is that? Like, are people about that, or is that still something they don't quite understand?
I think the coolest part about the position we're in right now as having like an agency and also like a YouTube channel is that like the results of the YouTube channel, I can now go into meetings on the agency side and people are like, now I'll actually listen to you. And you're
That's
like,
powerful.
Right? And then you can make suggestions, and then they're more open to it because there's obviously a reason why success has happened in one space, and you can leverage that. So I find the two, like the agency and YouTube, feed each other really, really well. And both will be like, on the YouTube side, you can be like, I can do a bigger campaign because I have director of photographies. I have this whole network that we can tap into to make professional, high quality content. And then vice versa, where those people are really excited that there's almost like a marketing arm or marketing knowledge being built into it.
Yeah. And a lot of times that means an audience is built into it.
100%.
Which can be so powerful.
Yep. And that could be the difference between you getting the job or not getting the job, or to upsell into something as well.
More money.
Yeah, more money. So having both has actually provided to be like a really unique opportunity to like create opportunities for other people that don't have social followings, as well as to bigger scale social projects. And I think that's like one of my favorite parts of where I'm at right now.
Oh, that's so cool. Because I think a lot of people out there who have traditional jobs or maybe own traditional businesses, whether it's the agency side of things or something, they don't quite see how YouTube or Instagram or Twitter fits in with their business as an agency. But I think it can be so beneficial to almost just use as a case study. If you as an agency can go and build out your following with really interesting content and interesting individuals that you're like highlighting or creating with, you can then go and use that as examples in meetings and use it as leverage to say, look, this works. This is what you could do. My
biggest beef with agencies right now is that there's so many that claim to be like, we can grow your following, we can get huge reach. And then like the people or the CEOs have like 10 followers on Twitter. And you're like, there's no way. You don't practice what you preach. And if you can't prove it on your side, then why would I as a company trust you? But these people do, and they're persuasive. And I think it's really built on those relationships and old school relationships. I just want to work with Tom because we've been working together for 20 years.
Let's do it.
Who cares if I lose $100,000? I like Tom. And you're like, come on. Right. So I think there's going to be a big shift in the next little while. And I always believed in social. I think it's the most powerful way of marketing. And it's such a unique opportunity right now, and I'm glad that everything's moving to influencer and social, because television, it's funny, I studied radio and television. Straight up, I will say this right now firmly, it's dead.
It's dead. And I think still a lot of people are using YouTube and thinking that it's the next, it's a step to get to traditional media. But it's we've already arrived. I mean, you can make a living on YouTube and you can always do different things. But I think to think TV as the final destination is so whack because it's on the way down. It really is.
So I can actually speak to that. So when that surfing and playing guitar video went viral, broadcaster in Europe reached out and they were like, do you want to create a television show? And I was like, yes. So I pitched a whole television show to them. We made a pilot. It broadcasted to 20 million people across Europe and people in Latvia and all these places. It's nuts. And then they greenlit a whole entire season, and we shot a whole television show. And I remember thinking, I was like, I'm gonna be so happy when I have this. And I was surprised when everything was done that I was I never got the joy of seeing it because it wasn't even being broadcast in Canada. So I couldn't even relate to watching it as on television live. And I've actually never been happier than making content on YouTube, and social has been the place. And it's funny because I thought it was oh yeah, it's this stepping stone to get to traditional media. And I just I found myself just really not loving that space because there was a real disconnect. You had to promote it, had to be watched at a certain time. And whereas I love the on-demandness, the urgency, the community. YouTube is just the best, man.
Yeah. And with these traditional brands, we've seen MTV and VH1 just die miserable deaths. And at the same time, though, the circle I'm in with creators, and even I at one point was I want to make this a show. And I had those LA meetings in the gross corporate rooms and have people telling me okay, so you won't get paid for this a lot, but it's great exposure. It's TV. I'm dude, I already have exposure. If you're telling me that it's not even something that I could make a decent buck off of, why? And it's them taking the creative control, and it's them doing so much of it, and then you just turn into a talking head. And with MTV, it's really weird because people are still so adamant about like, oh, I have a pilot and I might sell my show to MTV.
Yep.
But it's like, no one's going to see it. And it's such a sad missed opportunity because MTV has that brand awareness, that mainstream awareness, where if they made a poppin' YouTube channel 5 years ago and have been putting, if then it became web series on MTV YouTube channel, oh my God. Do you know how much they could be crushing right now?
Yep.
But they're still doing TRL
because they had all this
TV.
like infrastructure and they had all this money and they're like, we're not too sure about this social thing. Is it a fad? Is it not a fad? And you're just like, no, it's the future.
Yeah.
Right. And like the interesting thing is like in Canada, there was like a very big broadcaster that isn't, you know, as well known anymore, but it was called Much Television. And it was like music on demand television, and watched all the music videos growing up. And I remember we had to pay as a band to have our video played on this channel. I remember we finished it and we had to have it converted to tape. So we had to find some guy to put our digital video on some beta master tape. It cost us like $300, sent it in by mail. And then like one day someone was like, hey, I think I saw your video on Much. And I was like, oh my goodness, but everybody had watched it on YouTube. It was like all there.
Right.
And then we had posted like, oh, this is the greatest, our video's being featured on Much. And like the vanity plate of it is kind of cool, but it almost felt like payola. Like it was like we had to pay to have our video distributed to something that like no one really cared about.
Oh, man.
And like, I think the vanity plate is fine, but it's one of those things that's like, once you're past that, like to have that in your bio, cool, dip. Get the vanity plate and move on.
And I see it all the time in so many different places in regards to maybe getting verified on Instagram.
Yep.
That process, okay, Instagram is new media. You know, I see it as new media, but you have the traditional print and the traditional blogs, Mashable, all of that stuff. I still think they're doing cool stuff on social, but I still consider that very much like old media, blogs and stuff. In order to get verified on Instagram, you have to have traditional media. And I'm like, why is the reason to get verified in new media to be verified by old media?
Yeah, that's
it makes no
backwards
sense to me.
Yeah,
you know, but yeah, so it's an exciting time to be in the middle of it, to be, I think, on the right side of things. But then I'm always very curious, looking out like, oh, what is VR, AR doing? What is 360 doing? So what are some things that you're interested right now that you think is going to be in the next 5-10 years?
I mean, I really think VR is super cool. I just don't think it's hit like a mass audience yet. That like, I think it's mainly because it's just not that accessible. And like, to really experience VR, you need the goggles, you need, you know, the headphones, you need to have this type of content. Number one, I just don't think there's enough high quality content out there that people are like, oh wow, like this is amazing.
They need that hit TV show.
Yeah, exactly.
Something.
And they need the writers and they need the teams behind it. And I just think the really top talent, like let's call them like the people who've moved over to like something like Netflix, or the people who are creating that type of content, they're just not in the VR space yet. So you don't have those like epic writers and those things that would hook you emotionally. I think the vanity of like, wow, VR is super cool. I think it's awesome. I think
do you like wearing it though? I find it kind of annoying.
It's a little uncomfortable. Yeah. And like, I think there's still like a lot of things that need to tweak until it feels like it's like integrated into our society better. I just think it's cool. I have a lot of friends who do VR and they make really great content. And like, I just wish that the world could experience the stuff that like, they're doing, because I feel like there's things that they've done that would hook people into it.
What's their name?
They're called Combo Bravo.
Okay.
He's like one of my best friends growing up, and like they're basically like the top VR company in Canada now. Yeah, and they like travel all around the world, and they like, the stories are just like the best, but their content is amazing. And like specifically, like one of my favorite shots that they did is they went to like the Somalian border, like literally went all the way to Somalia to a refugee camp, and then like put everybody around in a circle so that you could see like what life was like there.
Wow.
And I think my ability to empathize with that situation drastically increased because of VR. And I think that's what makes that medium so powerful.
That's cool. And I think that was the same people who you made a video on, right? In terms of finding a niche and not to become desensitized to the situation, talk about business again, but in terms of building a company and meaningful content, I think it goes so far when you can find a niche and go full on. So their thing is very obviously VR, maybe 360 stuff. And that's probably a part of why they've found their success.
Yeah. Well, I think it's super cool that like basically they're like 26, 27, 28, like these group of guys that are basically working on some of like the most world-class like projects with like Nordstrom and like massive brands where the majority of the people on the team are in like their 40s and 50s, and like they're the ones pioneering this. And they in like literally a year they went from like 0 to hero. And like in terms of big projects and big budgets and working with like the biggest brands. And like that's because they found a niche, got really good at it, and just exploded. And like they were doing all the traditional stuff, competing against like music videos and with other people. And it wasn't until they did something different that everyone's eyes were on them. And that's like what I think is really important with like business specifically, is that there's just like, a teacher said it in school, and I just really loved this. It's like we live in a state of aporia right now with media. Nothing's really like fully set. The rules are not in place. And in the next 10 years, that will be the new like baseline for everything. But because everything's so new, it's moving so quickly, you can grow so fast and become like, I don't want to say like an overnight success, but you can completely change your life around in a year just because still nobody knows what's going on.
And that means that people are willing to invest money into things that is still kind of the unknown.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of companies on the flip side of things who are excited about this new world, that they will embrace it, and they'll give you $50,000 to go make a killer VR video.
Yeah, because the return on their investment could be massive. Right. And that's what I think is so cool, is because there is no like set rule book or something that's like, oh, guaranteed success, but it could be like a massive success. It's kind of fun to just like constantly keep trying for that spot.
So cool. Going back to music a little bit, you mentioned rapping when you were lifeguarding and how that helped you with repetition and getting in a routine like creatively. So expand on that.
Yeah. So I was a lifeguard. I like worked at a little small town, and like obviously a very boring job because you sit and just like watch.
Did you ever save anyone?
I saved a dog. Isn't that so cute?
That's cute.
So there's a thing called the pooch plunge. Where every year at the end of the year at the outdoor pool, they would have all the dogs come, and I would have to lifeguard a bunch of dogs. And someone thought it would be fun to throw their chihuahua in. And I jumped into the dog-filled pool and saved the baby chihuahua. And the lady didn't even care. I was like, here's your chihuahua. And she's like, oh, cool, thanks. And I was like,
you deserve a medal for that.
I saved your dog. I jumped into the dog pool. No one else jumped in.
It's probably so dirty and gross.
I don't even want to go there. It was definitely not pleasant.
A plunge.
Yeah. So anyways, that was the extent of my lifeguarding career in terms of saving people. It was actually just for an animal, a little chihuahua.
But a chihuahua.
Yeah.
Not just a dog. But a chihuahua.
It was like basically I just like put my hand. I could have just like put my hand in and grabbed
it.
But you were
like, I'm going
in. It was like
in.
slow motion. Let's do it. So anyways. So going back to like your question specifically, or I guess your comment, was that because I have so much time just sitting there like hours on end, I wanted to like utilize it in the best way possible. So I was like very much into hip hop, still very much into hip hop. And I just kind of like realized that I could use these like little moments to like practice things in my mind. So what I would do is like, I would learn how to try to rap. So I'd have like the lyrics, and every time I'd go back into like the guard office, I'd reread them. And then I just go over and over and over again until I actually got the entire rap done and finished from start to finish without like any mistakes. And I think that's what helped me like realize that like you'd fall back down, like don't give up, just constantly keep going until you've reached that goal. And I think that's like a fundamental building block to like where I am now.
That's powerful. That's cool. And you never know how things will transfer over. Because you studied radio and television in college, but was there a moment before that you were going to go a different path? Yeah,
like it was like my life is just such a mixed bag of things. And I think I just wanted to try so much because I have so many different interests. But when I was in high school, like I had the grades to pursue engineering and be an architect and like all these different things. But I definitely knew in the back of my mind, I was like, I think I'm like cut out to be a creative. And I think I'd rather like, I have a lot more fun making videos, and I like had been doing that for a long time. And I liked being a photographer. I just didn't really understand the business side of it. So I think a lot of people, just because they want to be photographers, have this idea that it's very difficult to be successful. So you're always surrounded around people that are being like, oh, you want to be a photographer?
Cute.
It's cool. Like, what else do you?
Your day job.
Yeah, and you're like, and like that's very it's powerful because it's like this baseline thing that no one's really talking about that makes you feel like you're not like, don't go after it. If you do it properly, it can actually be a very successful career. And I'm so happy where I am now, but I had the grades to go and pursue engineering. And then I remember like my dad had told me specifically that he had like pursued money and he just wasn't like the most thrilled with that choice in the long run. Right. And he's like, yeah, like the money allows me to live the lifestyle that I want, but because we spend such a majority of our time in these roles or at our job, you know, make sure that you at least enjoy it while you're on this planet. Right. So we went to the school, he saw the radio and television arts program. He's like, do this. And I remember like, I just got this like big chill and I was like, okay, we're going to make it work. And like, even going into that program, I thought I was going to be an audio engineer. And then year 2, I started making videos and I had like a YouTube comedy troupe page where we made like 100 skits of like all this different stuff, and I dressed up as like Harry Potter and Call of Duty things, and we just tried to do so many things. It's kind of like Smosh a little bit, but anyway, we were very inspired by Smosh. And we tried to do that for a while, and then because I was making videos, and then someone's like, oh, you make videos, and then like I got my first paid gig, and it just kind of grew from there. And then I ended up falling in love with video and photography even more.
Man, that's so cool. But that's not something I overlook. Over 100 videos, and those were full on like skits.
Yeah, and like
would you script them out?
Yeah, so we'd get together. So it was like my 3 closest friends at school. We called it the LMA show, which is like LMAO. Guys, we're so funny.
Cracking up over here.
It was also the hardest thing to search on the internet. So I feel like the SEO behind it was just garbage. That's why I don't think it was as successful. But every week we'd get together and then we would write at like our little cafeteria over shawarmas like all the time. And then we would shoot them at like a friend's house on the weekend. And then we would try to like bulk shoot them. And then we'd put out like 2 to 3 videos a week. And we tried so many strategies to try to like grow it. And it like, we'd get 2,000 subscribers over a couple of months. And then eventually we found into like a routine that worked and it was growing, but no one was happy anymore. And it became like just not fun and stressful. And everyone like literally, I think in 1 month, everyone was like, yeah, we're done.
Wow.
And it just completely fizzled out.
Do you ever miss scripted content like that?
A little bit. Like it's fun. I mean, like there's parts of it that like we do it a little bit from time to time and we still do scripted content while we're like in our agency roles. But it's not the same as like going and trying to like exercise like a comedic, muscle or anything like that. And just having goofy. Fun and being goofy. And like, I remember like those times I would cry laughing. Like those were some of the best times of my life. And like, I still have great times now, but I just mean like looking back on it, I can reflect on like my body hurting from laughing. And other people didn't think it was funny, but like our little group of friends. But you thought it was
funny, and that's what mattered.
Yeah, but we learned a lot through doing that, where it was like how to like put out content consistently all the time, and like business parts around it and marketing. And like that's the biggest thing is a lot of creatives are very good at making things, but the marketing aspect and getting it seen is a very like overlooked part of it. And I think that's what discourages a lot of people because they'll value only the results of what would be considered the marketing part of the job.
You said you opened up for Bobby Lee at one point.
Yeah.
Explain.
There's so many things. So,
which, by the way, for some reason, he has been like popping off lately.
Yeah, he's in commercials. He's like a Netflix series. Like
crazy.
Yeah, I love Bobby Lee. Okay. Anyways, so it was like a few years ago. I had like a mutual friend introduce me to like a radio DJ that was like starting like a Sirius XM show. I was like a huge fan of this DJ because he went from like traditional radio into like Sirius XM. And basically we had a meeting with this guy and he was like, hey, do you want to like write skits and like little like sound bites and produce content for my radio show? And I was like, sure. So like that was a thing that I did. It was like the Todd Shapiro show.
How long did you do that?
I only did it for like a few months because I just what fundamentally was the issue is like I lived an hour and a half away from the studio. Gotcha. So to go in like daily just like didn't work, especially when there was like hope of pay down the line. And I was like, this is cool experience. This is fun to put on the resume again of being like, I worked for Sirius XM, got to meet him, learn a few things from him. But I think it was like, I got a text the night before Bobby Lee was going to be on the show, and Todd, who was like the radio host, was like, hey, Bobby's on the show tomorrow. Like, do you want to write a song? I'll get you to play it right before Bobby's on. Right. And I was like, sure. So like me and my buddy wrote this song about Justin Bieber's like deposition because like that was like really the hot topic right then. So then we played it on the radio. Bobby was in the room and he was like crying, laughing in like the room with us. And then like on live radio, he was like, okay, tomorrow night you're opening up for me at my sold out show in Toronto. And I was like, pardon? He's like, yeah, no, you have to do it. And I was like, sure. So I thought, because I came from an experience of like playing on stage and singing songs, but like playing to an audience that's expecting music is a drastically different audience. That's like, I paid money to laugh and be
funny.
Happy.
Yeah.
I don't talk at all during this show and I just want to laugh and feel good.
So how was that?
So it was like, I don't want to like give the answer away yet. I don't want to be like, hey, it wasn't that bad. But like, basically it was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, but in a good way. So I texted Bobby before. He had like been sleeping the whole time. And I was like, I called him. I was like, hey man, like, am I still good to like come and perform today? He's like, what? Who is this? And I was like, oh, it's Chris. Like, you were on a radio show yesterday. Like, you said I can open up. He's like, sure, I'll give you like 3 minutes. And I was like, okay. So we like drove all the way to Toronto and we played this song to an audience. And like, there was a few chuckles, but I just remember like looking into the audience. And I know this is like a podcast, so I'll try to like vocalize and describe what it was. But I remember like singing the song and there'd be like a few like, yeah, like just like kind of laughs. But I looked at one man and he was just like the biggest grin on his face, like arms crossed in front of him, just being like shaking his head back and forth. And my heart's just like pounding. I was like, I need this to end right now. And then I just remember like it finished. I was like, well, thanks guys. And everyone was like, and then like the host was like, anyways, that's Chris Howe and Colin Sedaris, everybody. Up next, we got our next comedian right now. And like, I just remember being like so terrified of that experience, but I'm still glad I went through it. Mm-hmm. But being on stage in front of like a comedic audience it's a very humbling experience.
I feel like stand-up comedy is the peak in terms of entertainment, the hardest thing to do, period.
And I'm glad I've been through it to like say that with conviction. It was one of the hardest and stressful moments of my life, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you survived, and you could say, is that out there on the internet anywhere?
I think I have a video of it somewhere on a hard drive. I wish that was like, I gave my phone to somebody in the audience. I was like, can you film this? And like, they did just like the worst job. So I have like just a horrible video clip from like an iPhone 4. Like, it's just bad quality. It's like low light. It looks like garbage, but it's there and it exists. And I have Bobby Lee's number in my phone. So if I'm ever in LA, maybe I'll text him. And
yo, it's that one dude from your show.
Yeah, he's like, who? Chris Howe. How what? It's like, never mind.
Oh my gosh. You mentioned iPhone 4. What was the first piece of equipment that was like, I'm going to make videos for a living, or I'm going to take pictures for a living? Yeah. Was it an iPhone? Was it like a Canon T3i? That was my first camera that I was like, this is fun. This could be a thing.
Yep. I mean, I want to answer your question because we both had the same camera.
Oh my gosh.
So
yes.
My first real like introduction to content creation was at around 8 or 9 years old. Mm-hmm. I think I can't remember. Maybe it was like a little bit older, 10 or something. Not important to the story, but I want to keep elaborating. Was the digital blue like camera. It's what it's called. I think digital blue.
Yeah. And if you guys are subscribed to my YouTube channel, hopefully you are, I made a video titled My First Video Camera or something. And it's where I took this camera and I tried to use it again, and it was a mess. I had to like download Windows 95 on my PC with like VMware and like it barely worked. And so digital blue, that was
digital
your first,
blue. I think like 240p footage. It only like stored up to like, oh man, the most beautiful pixels you've ever seen. Yeah, and it shot like 240p and like 5 minutes of footage and maybe like 100 horrible photos. But I used that, and like I actually like would vlog with it. And it's funny like looking back now, but I remember being like, hey guys, I'm Chris and we're at the car show today and we're gonna go look at Lamborghinis. And then I would just like have a montage to like Sum 41 music or something like that of like Lambos and like cars and stuff like that. Anyways, that was my like, and I would make CKY videos. I feel like John would really like that reference.
I only know of CKY because of Jonathan Hill.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, John. Yeah. I know you don't listen to my podcast, but shout out.
But it wasn't even like exciting. Like I would jump off of like a small ledge and like think it was like so like this is hardcore. Yeah. With like big, like heavy music behind it. I think, but not even like Evanescence.
For people that maybe didn't live through that MTV phase, what was
quick context? It's like basically it was like Jackass. It was just another version of it. It was called like CKY stands for Camp Kill Yourself. It was just like a bunch of idiots like doing stupid stuff. Bam Margera, who's like a professional skateboarder, was like the lead of this, and his brother played in that band. Just the most disturbing content. Like I remember like re-looking
like
it up.
Crap on the street and stuff, or like out the window of a car.
And they're all like laughing, and they thought like they like burned a rental car down one time. I was like, this isn't. Why is my family allowing me to even view this? Like looking back now, I wasn't
allowed to watch MTV.
Yeah.
I loved Made. Did you watch Made?
No, what's Made?
So it was basically where they would have a person, they would say, I want to be in a band. I want to play guitar, but I've never played guitar before.
Yeah.
So they would have someone on the show who's a professional guitar or something from a band. They would come in and teach this person how to play guitar. Yes. And so the epic like ending to the story, the arc would be this person has learned how to play guitar. Now they're going to play their first show. And it was so cheesy. I mean, it really was. If you go back and look at an episode, you're just like, how did I watch this? But during the time, it was the first type of content that you would see someone having a dream and like, you know, teaming up with someone and then making it happen. And it was such a cool show. I loved it so much. But I had to watch that in between, like when I got home from school and when my mom got groceries, because I wasn't allowed to watch MTV because it had Jackass. It had all of that stuff. Oh my God, good times. What was your favorite show growing up?
Favorite show? The Office.
The Office.
Favorite show
Did you watch like Nickelodeon, Disney Channel?
I loved like the Weekenders.
Okay. Was it the same in Canada?
I think so. We had Family Channel in Canada.
Okay,
I used to like always watch that all the time, like Even Stevens and things like that.
Stevens, heck yeah.
But you were talking about something, and I was really hoping that like through the conversation, like it would spark some sort of story that I could tell, because there's always like these really weird things. But I want to share the story because I've never shared it in any social space. But when I share it, this is the exclusive right now. You get to share this.
I'm so honored.
So you were talking about like Made and how like somebody can like you'll teach somebody the day of, and then they'll try to play in a band or something like that. So when I did those surfing and playing guitar videos, I got reached out by this Japanese television show, and they were like, we have this girl, she's a comedian, her name's Emoto. She wants to come out to Canada. We're going to film a segment. You're going to teach her how to surf, and then she's going to try to play guitar as well. And I remember like emailing this guy back being like, it's not going to happen. Like, it's just, I'm straight up, it's not going to happen. And he said in the email, quote unquote, but Emoto has balanced on top of 2 balls before. And then I wanted to say, not the same thing. But then he said, here's our budget. And I said, yeah, sure. It probably could work. So anyways, like one day, so they kept getting pushed back. So like, we're coming in August. And I was like, cool, it's a great time to come to Canada. And they're like, we're coming in September. Things got moved around. I was like, still a great time to come to Canada. They're like, now we're coming in October. I was like, what time in October? Because it's getting cold now. They're like, end of October. And I was like, she's going to need a wetsuit, and it's like freezing, and like most of the days are overcast and gross, or like whatever, we're willing to take the risk. So they came over. I had to go to like a scuba place to buy a wetsuit for this girl. She's like the biggest comedian in all of like Japan, and she has giant eyebrows, like giant eyebrows on her face, like literally drawn in with like a pencil, right? And then I had a translator there because she didn't speak English. So there's 7 people. I like organized to have like a Sea-Doo with like so that another person would drive the Sea-Doo and be able to shoot side angles with like a camera operator on it. So this whole Japanese team with 1 translator came over, and they were like, today's episode, we need to shoot this in 3 hours. You're going to try to teach her how to surf.
3 hours?
3 hours. And it's like, think about the logistics
of own camera crew?
Yeah.
So you like had to be like, you're sitting on this Sea-Doo.
Yeah. And like the translator would like try to communicate. So this story is amazing. I'm going to go into like all the juicy details of it. So we're on the boat. It's an overcast day. It's freezing. And they're like, the one guy, like the director's like speaking in Japanese, saying to like, and then basically the translator's like, okay, the first scene is that we're going to get you to surf and play guitar. Emoto is going to be on the beach, and she's going to like be in this schoolgirl outfit, and she's going to jump up and down when she sees you go by on the boat while surfing and playing guitar. You're going to fall off the surfboard and then swim into shore. And I was like,
During this, is this like Chris long hair? Are they like, you have to commit? Like your hair is gonna be blowing in the wind?
Yeah, all this
stuff. So they're
stuff.
playing up both sides.
Oh
of
yeah.
It. Okay.
So like we drive by, and then I like get off. I like throw the guitar in the boat, and then I swim into shore. And it was like not like a 2-minute swim into shore. Like it was like a 15-minute swim into shore.
Oh, God.
So I'm swimming, and I'm like.
So when you get there, you're like, oh, I can't
and
breathe.
then she runs up, and she's like, oh. And then the translator's beside, being like, she asked you what your name is. And I was like, there's no way. She like talked for so long. So I was just like, my name is Chris. And then she's like, oh, like she's jumping up and down. And then she like basically says something else. And he goes, she wants you to like go and teach her to do this. So that was the first scene, was me swimming up to this like girl with massive eyebrows wearing like a schoolgirl's uniform, swimming into shore for 15 minutes. Now the second one, I like tried to teach her. So this is where it really gets juicy. So tried to teach her for like an hour how to surf. She just couldn't do it. It's just like she didn't have the strength, and like, and because of like the barrier, it's very difficult to communicate how to do things. And I would try to show her like monkey see, monkey do, like just follow what I'm doing.
Right.
So eventually the director's in the boat. I'm in the water with her, and we're both floating there on the surfboard. And he's basically, the director's like, go to something like, and like screams out. And then he's like, why don't you just try to surf together? So now I'm putting a moto between my arms, both her feet on the surfboard. Like, remember when you and John tried to do like the boosted board thing? So I have her in my arms. I scream out to my dad, go. And then we're now surfing together. I have this Japanese woman in my arms. Oh my God. Right? And I just like, so then the director screams out behind the camera, and then she starts singing at the top of her lungs a Slipknot song.
What?
And like a heavy metal song. And I remember just like everything stopped in my mind. And then I was like surfing with her in her arms while she's screaming Slipknot, being like, so much had to happen for this moment to occur. Like so much planning and like everything.
And this is it peaking.
At the peak of it. And then we drop. And then she gets back in the boat and we finish, and then I have to like sing my little part. And then the audio guy had like put a microphone on the inside of my wetsuit. Yeah. And then when I took it off, the microphone was broken because he just didn't put it in like the right plastic bag. So they're like, we need to get this segment, but we can't reshoot it because we need to go. So I went into a washroom at a restaurant across the street with the audio recordist, and I played the song hoping that they could match it. I finished the song in the washroom. He goes, and left. And then they drove off in the car, and I was still in the restroom after I played the song.
Oh my God. So did they air it? Like, how did it look?
Apparently it aired in Japan. I like asked for a copy of it. They like couldn't find one to send me. So this is the whole thing with like traditional television again, where you're like, what? Anyways, that was like my experience with Japanese television. And it's as like, when you think of Japanese television, it kind of suits it. It's like very much on brand.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for sharing that. That was special.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite stories to share.
So like, was that like you have no contact with this person now, or like the production company or anything?
Like the person that was like representing like the television studio, who was based out of the States, just like left his job, and then like no one introduced, and there was like, so it's just like, that's a thing that happened in my life.
One day when we all go to Japan, maybe we'll see like a random Chris clip.
I really hope someone goes and tries to find it. Like, please find it and then tweet at me. That could be an
amazing video.
Yeah.
Starts now. So your new goal in life
is to
find this clip.
Yeah.
Because I think the world deserves to see it.
Oh, man. I just remember being like, what just happened? Oh, and like, I remember my dad being like, he took the day off work to like come and do this. Yeah, to like drive the boat and everything. And like, anyways.
I mean, what was his take from all of it?
He just laughed. Because it's like, it is that one of those things where parents just need to be supportive of your career, and they can't say anything. They can't be like, stop pursuing this because we don't want to do this anymore. Just be like, cool, that happened, and a paycheck came in later.
Wow. He sounds like a cool dad. Seems like you have a cool support system.
Papa How, man.
Papa How.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, what was it like growing up with your family in Canada? Were they always, I mean, it sounds like he was super supportive when it came to that college decision.
My whole family is like the best. I love them so much.
That's
and they're the most supportive. And then like, I think a very fundamental reason as to why I pursued social and pursued like my own company and did all this stuff is because literally every single person in my family was an entrepreneur. And like my grandparents were like the most inspiring, like both of them. So my one grandfather and my grandmother started like so many multiple companies. They came from Germany and Austria. So I'm German-Austrian background. And they came to Canada with like no money. Classic story. I feel like that's always
that's
like we came here with no money.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is, yeah, okay. But it's true. So they started multiple businesses. And like one of their big things is like they used the niche of like being German in Canada to build a whole German network. So my grandfather like is the reason why Oktoberfest exists in Canada. So there's like a photo of my grandfather in front of like 5,000 people holding a beer stein in one hand and me wrapped around his arm while I'm wearing lederhosen. And it's like, that's a photo that exists in the basement of his like German dwelling. And
that is incredible.
He started a German travel agency where he brought German Canadians from around the world for the last 14 years of his life. So my grandmother's been everywhere. She's been to like South Africa like 14 times. She's literally been to almost every single country.
Oh my gosh.
So like that's like why it's so inspiring. And like this is a cool story just because I thought the marketing behind this was hilarious. So his partner was in German radio, and obviously at the time radio was like the best means of reaching people, especially in the German community. It was a German radio station, so very niche. So the Germans listen to it all the time. So my grandfather had a deal with like the radio station where he would like call in and he bought all the seats on like a plane to Brazil. And then he would play Brazilian music in the background being like, we're in Brazil right now. We're having the best time. There's only 2 seats left on the plane. Call now. And literally within a half an hour would fill up like a whole 747 jet of German Canadians and like lived in Brazil for 6 months.
That's the classic limited supply thing.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to clothes or when it comes to anything,
Yep.
it's much more appealing that it's like, I only have 50 of these shirts
Yep.
and I'm never going to sell them again.
Yep.
So there's that, man, so they knew.
They knew.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unfortunately, like a lot of my family members had passed away when I was younger, but I always had the support. So I think mixed with like having everybody be an entrepreneur alongside everyone in our family passing away at like a very early age, I think there was just always like a priority to just do what you love while you're here.
That's cool.
So that was like a very fundamental reason why I think I like started a company and wanted to pursue social media in some capacity, and or being a musician, because it was just always like, I think I, even at a young age, because of those hardships and that support, I think I just like believed I could do it.
That's so cool. And it's awesome to hear that that's the background of your grandparents, and now you're literally traveling the world and taking pictures and doing video, which is so cool. How has travel played a role in what you're doing?
It's like one of the most important aspects. I think number one, like travel, to see the world and to empathize with different living conditions is a very humbling experience, and to be able to relate to people from around the world. So being on a platform where you can reach everyone, I think it's almost, fundamental to have empathy for different living conditions. And that's why I think travel is so important, as well as like it just, because my grandparents saw so much of the world, and I thought that that's definitely a thing that you can do. I just love it so much. And like my favorite moments and experiences in life just on a small scale have been like through travel.
That's cool. That's the first time that it was the first like really eye-opening experience, is when I left the country. And luckily my grandparents were like, hey, you're in high school, you need to experience stuff. We're not going to give you money, but if you want to go on a trip, we'll pay for like a Europe trip.
That's amazing.
And so the first time that I ever really traveled anywhere was to Europe, and it was insane to just see how different people live.
Yep.
And it just opened up kind of like a spark in me. And from there on forward, whenever, I would work and get a paycheck, I was like, all right, this is going towards this trip.
Yep.
This is going to go towards this trip. And I had really cool opportunities come up of going to like Nicaragua.
Yep.
When you go to Central America, that's when you see like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Especially Nicaragua.
Yes. Yeah. They're like, being born in the US or being born in Canada, you are, I feel like, just starting in a place of so much more I mean, I feel like privilege is like an icky word now, but it's true. It's like you have this opportunity and privilege by being born in certain areas that just like these people don't have.
Yeah.
And I think it is so humbling and so powerful to be able to like go into different communities, live life with people who live differently than you, and then kind of bring that perspective back because it's powerful.
Yeah. Well, it's very easy to get caught up in like the hustle and bustle. I mean, you live in like the busiest city in the world, and I live in also a very busy city comparably in Canada. And a lot of that like go mentality, I feel like my anxiety diminishes when I go to like places like Europe and these other ones. Like you see a different way of living that's a valid way of living. And like people subscribe to that,
I mean,
right?
People in Italy, you know, they don't work for what, like 9 months or 9 weeks. Sorry,
Yeah,
9 months would be
like
insane.
A great time.
Yeah, you know, in like France and Italy, there's periods of a month almost of just like not working because it's holiday.
Yep.
So they're not the whole like living to work thing. It's kind of like working to live. And
and like that's how our culture is primed. And like that's a really interesting thing about North America specifically. I mean, this is like a conversation we could delve into for so long, but I think that's why travel is so important and it plays such a key role in my life. And it's just fun.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, it's stressful too. Like there's always like the ups and downs of travel and no one sees the ugly sides. Everybody looks at like a Sam Colder Instagram and they're just like, oh, this looks amazing. But like I can relate because I know him and it's like, it's tough because he goes through a lot of like the things you don't see too. So I think on the side is like travel has both its positives and negatives, but I think the positives always outweigh the negatives. And it's great. Yeah.
Being Canadian and being in essentially entertainment in a creative business, was there any point in it that you were like, oh, I feel like I might have to move to the US or anything? Or was it kind of the you know, big fish in a smaller pond mentality where it's like, oh my gosh, wait, there's like a really big gap here that I can fill? And it's interesting over the past 10 years to see Hollywood projects now going to Vancouver and stuff like that. So what has your experience been with that and being in Canada?
I think the really cool thing about the internet specifically is it almost feels like the borders disappeared. And yes, like coming to New York right now, I see the value in like the opportunities, the real connections and the real networking, like face to face. Yes, those things can happen in the DMs and they can happen in all those places. I still fundamentally believe that like you can do that, but you can still travel to those spots. The internet has made it possible to make an impact on a global scale. And also being a Canadian that lives in Toronto, that makes social content, it just really seems like Toronto's like a hot spot right now and it's very accessible. And I think, like you said, it's an opportunity to build it in this place that you are in and build a community and network, a collaborative space. Yes, I think previously it was probably you'd have to go to those places. And like, I have a lot of friends who work in music and like, they're like, no, I'm a singer-songwriter. Like I have to go to Nashville. And yes, to potentially hit a bigger spectrum, you can do that. But I know very successful people that have never needed to like leave their house in like a small town and they still do it.
Yeah, that's cool. So you have your agency with your girlfriend, Lizzie, who is also insanely talented, but you dropped a bomb on me.
I could hear her fainting as you said that. I was like, what does that sound? I think it's Lizzie fainting.
I watched a very helpful video of hers about just like masking in terms of making the background a little bit darker to brighten up your subject. So thanks, Lizzie. You rock.
Oh man, this is gonna be like the next month. It's just gonna be like every morning. Remember that time Sarah that said all those great things about me?
No, she's fantastic, and you guys are so amazing. But you low key were like, yeah, we might be like dropping an album or like writing something.
Yeah. So I mean,
need
like
the deets.
The surface level deets, because it's still being fleshed out even on our end, is that a friend of mine, he's an amazing producer. He like works with like Shawn Mendes and like a lot of like the top people. He mixes, like he's just incredible at creating amazing songs that sound good, and also like the content and the creativity behind them is amazing. So Gabe, he's amazing. He works with like a lot of up and coming talent, and like he has just a really good ear for picking out certain artists that are like, he's just like, they're gonna make it big. So he showed me this band. I won't tell too much about it, but they're like these 16-year-old kids. I think they actually almost put like One Direction to shame.
Wow.
Like they're so good. So he was like, can you shoot the music video? And I was like, sure, here's the budget. And he's like, I'm paying for it. I was like, no, no, you're not, because we're homies and I can't do that for you. So I was like, how about this? I'll shoot the music video because I get along with you and I really love who you are as a person. If you in return will record a album for Lizzie and I when we're ready for that. And he said, down, like a clown to party like Charlie Brown.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I think Lizzie and I were like, we're going to go up to like the cottage. She has a cottage in like Northern Ontario. I think we're going to go up there. We're going to like spend some time writing it. And then when we're ready, we're going to like make a little acoustic EP. And what the hope is, and this is like where I'd like to take it next year, is I'd love to do like a coffee shop tour, like some sort of like mini tour or road trip through either the States or like Canada. Do like a mix between like podcasting / live performance show where people can come out and like learn fun tech and like photography or just like Q&A mixed with like, now we're going to play
when
a
you
song.
come to New York.
100%. You have to shred and play a solo.
Oh my gosh.
See, there's so many opportunities. So I'm really excited about that because she has an amazing voice. Like Lizzie sings.
And see, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
So I
and she's so good. Like it's like
so much
it's upsetting how good she is because I feel like I tried for so long and she's just naturally good at it.
Right.
And like if I sang on this podcast right now, people will be like, that was the moment people stopped listening.
I doubt it, but oh my gosh, I'm so looking forward to that moment.
Yeah, so
I'm like so ready for it.
It's like a long-term goal, but it's something we really want to do, and like it kind of brings back my passion for music again. And I think we're in the place now where like I'm ready to do that again, where I'll love it.
Yeah, and I think you can provide a lot to your viewers and people because I mean the idea of a tour is so cool.
Yeah.
And I think it is difficult to execute when you're like, what would you even do? But music and the whole podcasting thing now has provided such a cool just medium to share with people live that I think is going to be awesome.
So I think that'd be like a really cool thing to do, and maybe we'll like maybe the Dope Squad tour or something. I don't know. There could be something there. We'll see.
Well, that is exciting. Heck yeah. Well, the last question that we'll end off on: anyone out there who is trying to pursue a creative career, what is a piece of advice or encouragement, or maybe a saying, a quote, anything you have for them?
I mean, you just like spoke about the practicality behind it. I think if you want to be a creative in the world, just be conscious of the marketing and conscious of the business aspects, because if you can learn that, and I know it's boring, that is the reality of it, it's not as fun, but if you can like get that fundamental thing figured out, you will soar, you will live a creative life, you will make money, you will be happy, those things will happen. I think just make sure you have the right engine in place, which I think is marketing and business. And with that in mind, don't be afraid to go and pursue it. Don't let hardships stop you.
Heck yeah. So where can people find you? On the YouTubes and Instagram?
On the YouTubes, I am the Chris Howe, not just, I mean, you could look up Chris Howe. I was so mad. This like realtor in like Colorado has like the handle.
They actually post stuff, so you can't like kick them out.
It's like, don't buy a house from him. It's not the real Chris Howe. But the reality is, I'm the Chris Howe on like all the social handles. That's like all my branding for everything. So if you want to find me on all those things.
Chris Howe, he will be linked in the description below of this video, of this podcast, wherever you're listening to it. It's on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Pocket. Like, where do you listen to podcasts? Do you listen to podcasts?
I definitely listen to podcasts.
What's your
back
app?
and forth between like Spotify and then just the podcast Apple app.
Yes. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Chris, thank you for being on the Creative Exchange. This has been such an honor.
On a quick side note, it's a little surreal for me to be here because I was like such a big fan of your content, and like to like be watching you like a year ago and to be like here, like, and to be like friends where we text and like I could like tear up because I think it's so cool.
Well, no, I mean, you're doing epic stuff, and it's so cool to also just have a ever evolving group of friends and network of people who are doing amazing things that you can have fun, you can hang out, but you can also collaborate in creative ways. And I think that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, and that it's rooted in kindness.
Exactly.
I think that's what like is the glue that keeps us all together, and I think that's like my favorite part.
Heck yeah, I love that so much. Well, guys, stick around every week, every Monday. There is a new podcast. Chris, thank you so much for being on it. And you guys have a good one.